So now we are going to talk about the characteristic of database approach. So now the first characteristic is a self-describing nature of database system. What does it mean? Self-describing nature means the database itself has its structure, its definition, descriptive information about it completely inside itself. So therefore the database system is self-describing. So the database system contains not only the database but also a complete definition or description of the database structure and constraint. So it already contains the information, descriptive information, its definition and all in its structure itself, right? It in the constraints, and also it has its constraints and structure itself already in it. Therefore we have said that database system is self-describing because it already contains all of this information in it already. So therefore this definition is stored in a Dbms catalog, that is metadata, which we have already said, that is this definition or description is stored in where? In the Dbms catalog, and information stored in the catalog is called as metadata, and it describes the structure of the primary database. So you have to understand here is that this Dbms catalog, the information present in this, we have said that this definition or description is stored in the form of a catalog or dictionary, right? So the data which is present in this catalog dictionary is called as metadata. Okay, so this is what we have to understand. The first important characteristic of the Dbms is a self-describing nature of the database. And the second important characteristic of the Dbms is basically the installation between programs and data. That is, we're going to talk about data abstraction in detail. So the second characteristic is data abstraction itself. So first of all, program and data is separate. That is, we know the structure is stored in the separate Dbms catalog and the data is present in another part of the database. So therefore we have to understand that this program and data are independent. Program data independence is what this property is called as, because we know that the structure of the database is stored in the Dbms catalog separately from the access programs. So the accessing programs, that is, we access different programs, that access program and the structure is separately stored. So that means if in this table the data accessing programs, that is data, this data in this table is stored separately and the structure is stored in the Dbms catalog. So if I wanted to add date of birth to the structure, what happened is that I can directly add date of birth like this and create this table like this with date of birth without changing the data in it. This is called as program data independence, because this access data and Dbms catalog are both separately stored. Right, Dbms catalog is separate. Dbms, the main data, we have already described it in this environment here. This is where the metadata is stored. Okay, and here is a shared database is stored. So both of them are stored separately. So it is clear. So therefore, it is kind of clear to us. It is kind of clear to us, that is, if I am adding a date of birth again, it does not change the access programs. It only just add the date of birth column directly here, because metadata, that is Dbms catalog, and the accessing data are stored separately. This is called as program data independence. So this is important for us to know. So this is the first thing that we are knowing here is the program data independence. Now we have to know about the program operation independence. What does this mean? So this you have to very clearly understood. Okay, that means program operation independent means you have to know two important thing, that is about what do we mean by interface and what do we mean by implementation. So guys, understand this. You have two things that you have to know. You have to know about interface, and then you have to know about implementation for understanding this independence. So if I'm talking about interface, in interface case, you have to know that I am writing a query. So I'm considering this database, that is the student database. And you have to know that there are basically student and department. Two tables are there, let us say. And I'm writing a query. Select name from student where Okay, we may not know how to write the query and all, but I'm just consider this query right now. For understanding this concept, you have to know this. Okay, I'm writing a query which says I'm selecting the name from the student table whose salary is greater than 50,000. So this is the query which the user gives. So this query that the user gave is called as the interface. That is what the user can see. But internally what happens, we can see only the result. Right, we will see one table which contains the name of the person, let's say Neha itself, which has salary greater than 50,000. I can see only this result now. After doing this query, I see this result only. How this query is implemented is not our concern. Okay, we just know this is the operation that we have done. This is the operation that we have done. But how this query is implemented, that is its implementation part is happening internally, and it is not something we are able to see. So the query that we write, that what the user write can see, is called as the interface. And what happens internally, that is selecting the name from student and doing this operation and all are done internally, which is the implemented part. Internal part is the implementation part, which the user does not have to see. So that means the implementation part and the interface part are both independent. That means whatever the in the implementation and interface is not affected. They are both I would say they are both independent. That is what here it is saying. You have to understand that first of all, users can define operations on data. The operations are the different queries, update queries and all which you are giving. So the operation is specified on two parts. The operation is there. Operation, you are defining some operation. The user can give an operation. Now the operation has two parts. The first part is the interface part, and the next part is the implementation part. This is the next thing that you have to understand. So user would define one operation, and the operation is basically of two types, that is the interface part and implementation part. Interface part is what the user see, that is the tables, the view, the queries and all. The implementation part is how is that data is actually being shared, like the schema, joint operation and all happening here is basically coming under the implementation part. So actual tables, student database is the implemented level. You have two tables right now, and the queries that you're giving is the interface. Okay, now what happened is that the user would give one query and the select name from employees, and this is what the user writes. So therefore this is interface. Now what happens internally is basically known as the implementation part. Even though user, so you have to understand that the schema and all are coming is something which is happening internally. So the schema joins conditions, storage condition, that is checking this condition and all. The schema, the condition, all are happening internally. So therefore they are coming under the implementation part. So that is why I have said that this structure is basically implementation part. Now interface is the query, the table that you are basically seeing, what the user see. So this is what now this query is something which the user writes. So therefore this is interface part. How this query is executed is the implementation part. Even though user writes simple query, Dbms does is what the Dbms would scan the employee table. It will check this condition where salary is greater than 50,000. And if there is indexes, it will be using that and optimize the query execution. All these things are something which is happening internally. Optimizing the query execution, checks the interface indexes, and all these things are happening internally. So therefore these are the implementation part which the user doesn't want to see. So all this is hidden from the user. So the interface is operation which basically include the operation name and the data types of its argument. So implementation, so the interface is nothing but what? The interface is like a signature that you basically see, only something which you see. It only says what operation you have done and what data types or arguments this operation is basically performed. So it includes the operation name and the data types of its arguments, and the implementation of this operation is specified separately and can be managed without affecting the interface. Now the operations implementation is something which is happening separately, and this can be done without affecting the interface. That means the implementation is happening without affecting what? The implementation is happening without affecting the interface. That is what it says. Implementation happens without affecting the interface. So interface is just like a signature where the operation as well as the data type of its arguments are basically present. So in the interface, there is only the operation name and the data type of its arguments are only present, and the implementation part is how these operations are being implemented, and it can be managed, and this operations is specified separately. The implementation of this operation is specified separately, and we can be managed without affecting the interface. Here the operations are implemented, they are managed separately without affecting what? The interface is just like a signature which contains only the operation name and the data type of its arguments. So this is called as program operation independence. That is, the user application programs can operate the data by invoking this operation through their names and arguments, through the operation name and arguments, through only that is interface, only through interface the operation happens, regardless of how the operation is implemented. We don't need to know how the operation is implemented. The operation would implement without without affecting the interface. So the user application programs would do a particular operation, would invoke a particular operation, but just by knowing its name and its arguments, just by knowing that, it will do it directly regardless of this operation it is being implemented. The implementation operation is doesn't needed here. Okay, now let us see. So this is, that is the both this program operation, program data independence and program operation independence are together called as what? Data abstraction. So togetherly we can say that the program operation, okay, the program operation and the program data independence together are called as the data abstraction. Now the next thing is the multiple views of the same data. The next characteristic is you can have multiple views on the same data. That is, if there are different user which is accessing the same database at